Hi there, welcome to Nonsense Whisky. My name's Vin PF, and on today's episode we've got a little bit of a treat for you and for me. Now, I recently came into this little beauty here. This is the Exceptional Blend by Sutcliffe & Son. This is part of my Somerton Club subscription, and I pay £50 every 2 months and they send a bottle. I've covered a few of these things already so far, and this is the latest one to come through. But I also have the other bottle they sent out to their members this month, because a couple of my friends are part of this, and one in particular, he lent me the bottle so that I could try both side by side. And we don't really see this much over here. This is an American kind of concept. Don Sutcliffe is an American guy who has put this together. It was released in America in 2013, 2015, that sort of time. There's a couple of editions of each of these. This is the first edition of this, and this is the third edition of the grain. There's also a malt, so unfortunately I don't have that to do a triple threat today, but if I do end up ever getting the malt, I'll bring that to you as a solo review and compare it to these at the time. But today, I'll tell you a little bit more about these and why they're called the Exceptional and why they're priced as they are, which is quite expensive, I will say. Right out the bat, let's say they're about £80 to £85 in the UK, although I do have to say, checking out Master of Malt today, if you're watching this as of release, if you're watching this in the future, you might have missed it already, but if you're watching this today on Monday, then the grain is on deal. Very, very cheap, just over £50 in comparison, so you might want to go and pause this and go and check that out if you're interested in this. Anyway, the main selling point of these things is that the kind of collaboration between Don Sutcliffe and Willie Phillips, who was the managing director of the Macallan for a long, long time, about 25 years, something like that, ended in the mid-90s. And their collaboration has seen them find some exceptional casks, hence the name of the Exceptional. And in these things, you've got some really crazy stuff. I'm going to read off the back of the bottle when we actually talk about these in the nose and stuff, so you can go through the distilleries, and I'll tell you about the ages that are in there. But we'll go through that when we get to each bottle. The one thing that you will note on this, of course, is the lack of an age statement. Now, we know that there's some really high age stuff in these things. We're talking up to 33 years in some of this, but the proportion of that's going to be fairly low. We don't know what the bottom end is. I have to say, having tried them, and as you'll see after I've tried them in front of you guys, I severely doubt that there's really young stuff in here. It seems to me pointless to mix something that's been in a cask for over 3 decades to mix it with something that's only 3 years old. So I should imagine that we've got some good age stuff in here regardless. It just would be nice to know the specifics on that, like maybe on a website. The website is craftdistillers.com, I think. It's a pretty small company, really. The website's only tiny. I wish they had some kind of extra level of transparency on there that I could go and have a look into. That would be really nice. Less talking, more talking about the whiskies. I'm going to talk about the blend first, and then we'll move on to the grain. See the differences between the two, the similarities between the two, and which one I like the best. Bearing in mind that this one is the one that I actually own, and this is the lender. We'll go from there. So we'll start with the Exceptional Blend. Now, I'm going to tell you the distilleries that are in this based on this. I was going to try and memorise these, but there's so many of them, it just seems pointless. I may as well just read off the list. I don't know the proportions of these. I wish I did, but I'm going to go with a rash assumption because of the way they've done this, that the proportions go like they do on ingredients on the back of food, the highest proportion first and the lowest proportion least. That's my assumption. I might be wrong. Don't read into that too much. We're just going to go with it. I've got a couple of age to point out, but not many. There's only 2 in this one that I know the age of based on the letter that I was sent. So in this one, we have a blend, obviously. So this is of single malts and single grains. We've got some North British grain, Strathclyde grain. We've got a Cameronbridge, which is a 33-year-old whiskey, so that's probably a high proportion of that, maybe. Onto the malts that are in this, we've got some Glenfarclas, some Ben Nevis, some Balvenie, some Kinninvie, some Glenfiddich, some Altavania, some Othrosk, some Glenellachie, some Westport, which I'm come to understand is a mixture of Glenmorangie and Glenmurray, like a teaspooned malt almost. There's some Speyside Distillery, and as it says in here, in brackets, of course, Macallan Distilleries. Now, this is the important bit because there's a 30-year-old Macallan in this. I don't know how much, but that's obviously a very highly aged Macallan. you can't, you take that with a pinch of salt because you're not getting, for your £85, you're not getting a bottle of 30-year-old Macallan. It's just in there. A lot of stuff to go to. So I'm going to go with the nose and the palate on this, and then we'll move on to the other in a moment. The old Scotch Test Dummies glass, of course. Now immediately, it's a very light and easy nose. I can get my nose right in the glass here, get my snoz right in. And I'm not getting burned on that at all, so that's a good start. Now when I first popped this cork, because I was getting twisted with the Macallan, I could have sworn I smelled sulphur on this. Not a lot. And it seems to have disappeared. The longer I've left this in the glass, this has been sat out for a good wee while now. And I'm not really getting that anymore, for sure. There's definitely some sherry elements to it. One thing I did forget to say at the beginning of the show, fair enough, is that the way they do these, they've selected these casks and then they've married these together in a kind of mini vatting of first fill Oloroso casks. That's for both of these. So there's a little bit of Oloroso to this, for sure. And some toffee notes, I think. Let's get onto the palate. Okay. The nose kind of reflects the palate quite well. It's quite juicy on the palate as well. It's really making my saliva glands really go nuts. Really starting to salivate on that. But it really does translate kind of perfectly. Very light, very easy. Some little sherry notes to it, some toffee notes to it. It isn't the most deep whiskey in the world. It's just a very easy drinking, relaxing whiskey. And I do have to say, there is a very slight touch of the sulphury notes in this, and we're talking a touch of like gunpowderiness, a little bit meaty maybe. But one thing I will say on the camera to you guys right now is this is the first time I have drank a whiskey that I have detected just a whiff of sulphur, and I've enjoyed it. Absolutely fact. So hopefully I'm starting to see the other end of this sulphur nonsense that I've got. Or it might just be that this is a really well-rounded whiskey. Either way, I have to say the first time I popped it, when I took the kind of neck pour off this, I was a bit like, oh no, I'm a bit of a shame, I'm not really enjoying this. But as this bottle's going down, as it's starting to breathe, I'm enjoying it more and more. And I have to say probably what I'm going to do now is leave it as we have now. I've just got just to the top of the label here. I'm probably going to put that in my cupboard for a good few months and really let that kind of stew out. And hopefully even out. That's my idea. But so far, really enjoying that. Onto the grain, the exceptional grain. This is the third edition of this, and now each edition does change, so you'll have to look up which distilleries are in there. They're pretty transparent about that. I just wish they had some proportions. That would be nice. So yeah, the exceptional grain. This is a blended grain whiskey. Both Scotches. This doesn't contain any malt whiskey at all. So it's a little bit easier to talk about the distilleries. I'm still going to read off here for you, and I've got a couple more ages that I can shout out as well. We have North British, which was in this as well. We have some Loch Lomond, that wasn't in this, so that's interesting. Some Strathclyde, and that's purportedly a 21-year-old whiskey. There's some Cameronbridge in this, and this is a 32-year-old Cameronbridge instead of a 33-year-old Cameronbridge. And here's the big one, some Carsbridge is in there as well, which in this case is a 33-year-old Carsbridge. Allegedly, they had to go really searching for that at the back of a warehouse somewhere, which I think is quite a nice story. But that's a closed distillery. If you don't know, go and have a look on Google. You don't seem to see that around much anymore, certainly not for a good price. So if you're into your unobtainable whiskies and your collector's whiskies, this might be one to take a look at. But let's get into the tasting of it and see what we've got. As a few of you may know, if you're fans of the show, I really do like aged grain, so I've got high hopes for this, I have to say. This one's a Birmingham Whisky Club glass. Nice. Onto the nose then. Oh, again, very light and easy going. The old snozzaroo is straight in the glass. No worries about that. Sometimes you get a high strength whiskey, which these are not. These are both 43%. Sometimes you can barely get anywhere near the aperture of the glass before you think, oof, God. But this one, you can get right in there, and so you should as well. There's a lot to explore. Now here's where the differences start on this. Instead of it being kind of toffee and sherry led, although this has also been finished in the sherry cask as we talked about earlier, this one's very cereal forward. Lots of vanillas, and there is some sherry on the back end. Again, they're not overly complex whiskies, but they are ones that you really need to delve into. As part of my whole ethos on the channel, I don't go really heavy on the tasting notes. I'm sure if you pick up a bottle of this, you'll get way more than I ever say, but that's just because that's what I do here. It's just very light tasting notes, just indicative tasting notes. I don't want to kind of offload a whole load of opinion on you. Let's get onto the palate and see what we've got. Yes! It's exactly what I would hope for something with grain and exceptional on the label. It isn't the highest age grain I've ever tried. I've had the pleasure to try a 58-year-old North British. So I don't know what age the North British is in this. Again, I'll say as a guess, I don't think there's anything exceptionally young in here. It seems like a bit of a wasted opportunity if they did, but I really do think that there's a minimum of... It's got to be at least into the teens, maybe even higher. I don't know. If you do know, let us know. But this one has a crazy different palate to the blend, as you might expect, with all that extra malt in there. Obviously, there's some similarities with the blend with the grain that's in there. But really here, it's just a whole heap of extra kind of tannic, woody, tobacco vibes on there. But that cereal note from the nose is coming through again as well. I'm going to have another wee sip. Yeah, just really fabulous. The finish on this one is a little longer, a little spicier, some white pepper on there that I really enjoy. Now, comparison of the two. Unfortunately, as I said, I didn't get the malt, which is a shame. I would like to have covered all three in one go. Maybe one day I'll get the opportunity, we'll see. My palate prefers the grain, I have to say, which is a little bit of a shame that I didn't get that bottle, got this one instead. Completely underwrite that with, I definitely still enjoy this, and I will, as with all the bottles I've had with the Somerton Club so far, will continue to enjoy them, and it's helping me expand my palate, because every single one of them so far, bar the Bernheim, I think, I would probably not have bought anyway. Now, the real key thing about these is that they're about £82 in the UK. I think they're about $100, a bit more, maybe $120 in the US. We got these bottles for £50 each. So they're a little bit of a bargain, even if they might not have been something that I would have reached for myself. But the marketing on these things is very understated. You look at this doesn't give anything away about what's in there at all. If I'd have put a 30-year-old Macallan in a whiskey, I'd want to shout it all over the labels. Maybe they're not allowed to, I don't know. But there's no kind of ages on anywhere on this at all. I think that's a shame, but they're doing their thing, and they're doing it well, I think. The malt is meant to be better. I've seen reviews saying the malt is the best of the three, so a shame I don't have it, but one of those things. Again, I'll cover it when I can. If you've tried these, let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. I know there's going to be quite a few videos of these coming out in the next few weeks, because a few of the whiskey tubers, especially the British guys, have got these already. And I also know the Scotch Test Dummies have covered one of these, or some of them, in the past. I think they got hold of these a couple of years ago. Might be some different ones. Might be an earlier batch or release. So definitely worth going to check them out as well. But let me know in the comments what you thought of this. Nice little double threat for you. I'll do more of these if you like that kind of thing. Do let me know.